Alright, we left off looking at this. We're going to look at another way of, of clustering elements around here, around the cylinder. And to do this, we need to go back to the mesh, go back to the geometry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the geometry. I'm going to take a look at this. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and drop down another cylinder in there. I don't want to bring it to a radius of 300 or whatever it was, but I'll bring it to a radius of, say, 30. So if you look at it, it kind of clusters real tight around there, maybe 25. And I don't care how long this thing is. Here, just do that. Now if you look at this, it's hanging out one side. So what I need to do with this cylinder is I need to drag it back across there. I don't want to create a copy, but I want to drag it down the z-axis. Whoops. Oh, I better preview it. Drag it down the z-axis and hit applied. Now the next thing I want to do, and I need to drag these apart so I can find this one. Drag the objects, the movement. Okay, I believe it's that one. Yes. So what I want to do now is take a look at creating a partition. The object will be the wind tunnel. The tool object will be the cylinder. And we'll just call it partition 1. I have no particular reason to call it anything different. And we're going to take a look inside there at it. Now I've got something strange looking. Looks like, here, let's go in and hit the partition. Let's take a look. New view, display shading. So what I see is the same thing, except there is a little partition in there. So inside this partition, I'm going to go ahead and do an explode. I'm going to explode out, not the shells, but the faces. We're going to have more faces this time. I'm going to come in and do show only so I can look at it. Now, I do not remember if I do this one in a show. It looks to me like that's the inlet. Now what you see here is you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 10. So I'm going to have to be very careful here. Slide this over so I can see the. I'm going to cut this one back off. I'm going to come in here, cut these back on. Okay, so here's my cylinder. But these are all walls. Now let's look at this one. Now this one is quite unique. Let's take a look at it, and I'm going to see if there might be, let's see if I can do display mode shading. Whoops, it turns the whole thing back into shading. But let's go in here and cut off these walls, and what you notice is I have the cylinder, which I will change its color to, say, this color, and then I have this funny face, which I'm going to change its color to, say, something like that. And what you see is this outer cylinder is inside the mesh, so it should just be called internal. So it is not really a face. Okay, now what I did here is I turned on one that is on the far side. So this is nothing more than a wall. What is this one? This is a wall back over here. What is face 9? It's a wall. And face 10 looks like it's the exit. Now, let's go ahead and save this. And let's run off. Hang on just a second. The reason it's taken so long is it's saving a mesh that has a huge number of elements. So now I'm looking back here. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do a different mesh this time. So I'm going to come in here and select that. Eventually it will allow me to select it. I'm going to hit the delete key. And it'll all be gone in a minute, but it's a fairly big mesh. Now I don't really want the algorithms, nor do I need the hypothesis. Now if I go to save it, it should be fairly quick. So I've already saved it. The reason it was so quick is because now it only has geometries. So what do we do now? I am going to create a mesh. Create a mesh basically using partition 1. I'm going to put simple parameters, 25 again. And we'll make it fine. Okay, sounds good. Hit it. Let's mesh it out. Takes it a second. You can watch it in building the mesh over here if you feel like you want to. Give it a few minutes. And maybe I'll pause the video so we can go back and look at it when it finishes. Okay, it finished. 24,000 nodes, about 130,000 elements. Now, you may not see it, but there is something interesting to look at, and it looks as though there are concentric circles around this cylinder. So let's try something else. Create a submesh. The geometry is going to be mesh. All right, the mesh is going to be right there. And I had to run back to, sorry, I just hit the geometry. I had to run back to the partition because I forgot to do something. Now, I broke out all of the surfaces, but I didn't do another thing. I didn't hit the partition and explode and create the solids out of it. If I do, I see I have 2 solids. Okay, let's do show only, and what you see is view display mode. Why is it doing that? I don't know, but here is the internal part of this that looks like that. And then you see that if I hit the view here, let's see, display mode, it is shading. Alright, so this is the object there, this is the object here. So you got 2 solids now, one a little small region and then the rest of the mesh. So let's go back, let's go into mesh, and now let's create a submesh. This time I'm going to grab this geometry, I'm going to come in here, do the same thing, but this time instead of that I'm going to say 1. Uh-oh. So here's what we'll do. We run into this problem often. I'll hit a save, basically drop out of this, relaunch the application, okay, let's open cylinder. Here's our mesh with everything. There's our two solids. If we want to hit it, take a look at it. Let's just do show only. And then we'll come in here and do a show. Go over here into the meshing routine. Hopefully it won't bomb on me. Get rid of this Python script. Alright. Create a submesh again. This time we're going to work off of this solid. Go back and do exactly where we were. I'll go ahead and do a 1. Okay, so I have a submesh. There's an exclamation point on all of these. So now I'm going to generate the mesh. And it'll take some time, so I'll pause it and we'll come back to it in a second. Alright, as expected, it generated too many elements. As a matter of fact, it generated 2 million elements. 130,000 faces and 390,000 nodes. So let's take a look at the thing, but let's go in and look first at submesh, at the submesh here. Now this is a very big mesh, so it took quite a while to do this, much more than this video indicates. As a matter of fact, it at least took 30 minutes. It's probably going to take a while to get some of the mesh to even show up. So intermittently I'm going to pause the video and come back to it. So I'll go ahead and pause it now and wait for the mesh to show up on the screen. Alright, I got the thing to show up. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. Whoa. Okay, I'm trying to zoom in on it. It's frozen again. I'll have to pause the video. Alright, well I've got that far. See if I can get it to zoom in. Tell you what I may try to do, if it'll allow me to touch this. Alright. So what we're looking at is the mesh itself in the internal portion of the okay, sorry for the pause. Let's see if we can get, aha, so here we go, finally. So here's the internal mesh. What it did is it partitioned the mesh to generate a fine one on the inside, and if we hit the mesh on the outside and give it a second or so, which I may have to pause the video again, it's from no fault of our own. The computer is a virtual machine. It doesn't have very much space, so our processor speed, so if you had a very fast machine, this wouldn't occur. And finally it came up. So what you notice is a really refined mesh near here. It gets larger as you go out. But what I've done is I've done a submesh on a partition, and the advantage there is I can make a partition anywhere I want and do whatever I want to make the mesh in a certain partition a certain resolution, and the other will grade away from it. So What I mean by that is if you look at this, if I can get it to zoom out, which I'm attempting to do as we speak by moving the mouse cursor, you'll see that it's very fine around the cylinder, and as we move further and further away, it becomes a coarser and coarser mesh. Even that may not be sufficient, because if you look at the distance from the cylinder to the first layer, even though it is small comparatively, it is probably not large or not small enough. So this video has run for 15 minutes, and it took quite a bit longer to make. But what we did, or what we learned during this, is that we came into here and we had essentially our wind tunnel. We were in the geometry version, the geometry application. We create a cylinder which really did nothing more than partition around here and went back into the solid. So we created a partition from it, and inside there were two solids. We created the original mesh from the original partition, as you can see right here, and the submesh was from this solid. So it allowed us to make it as fine as we wanted inside this partition, and then it naturally grows to a larger and larger elements as we move away from this partition. So with that, I may call this video done, and we will address the third issue, or the probably one of the most efficient methods, next.